Hello, everyone. This is Brian Lewis at the Spin Zone, and so we broke down the Premier League picks. We did Serie A, so now we're on to La Liga in Spain. Now, keep in mind, um, Spain's been through a little bit of much. So Valencia have had the floods and everything going on with the Mestalla, and they had money granted for the stadium, about 190 million. That was reported out by by sources out there. I believe I saw it on the Guardian now. But however, with all the floods, they've had delayed games, including games against Getafe and other Spanish Cup games. So this week, for Valencia to be back in action, and they're playing Real Betis. So the 186 million for the refinancing of the Nou Mestalla, which has been a stadium that's been long awaited. There's been a whole Tifo football podcast on it, and it's on YouTube, very popular clip of them breaking down where the previous ownership and Peter Lim, the current ownership, have completely tanked the project and allowed the stadium to be vacant, basically be kind of a dwarf, kind of a sore thumb, kind of like those stadiums after the Olympics that get kind of like not used. That's where Valencia was for a little while. And then with the influx of money, the loss of talent, and vice versa, they're a little downskid. I'm surprised they didn't get relegated, despite how bad they got. But however, Valencia bounced back. They play Real Betis in their first game back. This should be a very emotional one. I'm going to say it's going to be a draw because they might be a little rusty. They haven't played a game in almost 3 weeks, so that's going to alter into my decision. The next game will be Getafe and Valladolid. I'll be honest, I haven't seen much of Valladolid this year. I've seen a little Getafe, and I have a little hope that Getafe pulls that one out. I would say probably 2-1, 2-0 victory there. Next game being Atletico and Alaves. Now, Atletico Madrid are coming off 4 straight wins, including a Champions League victory over PSG, which, by the way, impressive victory in that regard. PSG are not a slouch. So with Simeone having his new crop of talent, if you will, Alaves should be outmatched. So I'm going to go with a 3-1 result, maybe even a 2-0 result, and give Oblak a clean sheet. Next one being Las Palmas and Mallorca. I'm going to go with a draw on that one. Girona and Espanyol. I'm going to go with Girona, although they are not as talented as last year, clearly. They still have enough to pull that one out, and I'm not really too big on Espanyol. Vigo and Barca. Now, Barcelona are leading the table. They've had quite the performance, and they have quite a youth system on the way up. So Barca there is light at the end of the tunnel. I'm wondering how that Spotify deal is going to work. I also wonder how they're going to pay off some of these loans that they took out to try to save their club and try to continue funding and paying and recruiting these high-level talents and whatnot. They're going to have to continue to sell players for profit, and I wonder what they're going to be able to do in order to do that. So for Barcelona, good luck, but they beat Vigo. And overall, those are the Saturday games. Now going into Sunday, Osasuna and Villarreal. Now Villarreal were at one point like a UEFA, like a Europa League kind of team. And looking at the La Liga standings, you would think, Villarreal at one point were definitely in the consideration for the upper tier of that. And right now, Villarreal are in the top 5. So they've met the expectations. They've been a consistent, along with Sevilla, they've been a consistent squad that have been in that conversation. So if you look at the table right now, heading into those Sunday games, Barca's first, Real Madrid's second, but they're still falling behind, and there's a lot of talk about Ancelotti being let go. Atletico Madrid are third, and keep in mind there's a lot of new guys there. But Villarreal in fourth, and I have no doubt in my mind that they'll go ahead and beat Osasuna, even though Osasuna themselves have had a good season. They're in fifth. I just think the way that Osasuna play, they're just not going to be able to outpace Villarreal. So I'm going to go with Villarreal on that one. I'm going to go with a 1-0 result in that game as well. Now, Sevilla and Vallecano, now Sevilla are another one of those teams that where Europa League they're always winning Europa League, but they're kind of a seesaw. So they kind of have great seasons, they have bad seasons. Right now, they're in 13th. They're 15 points. They're only really like 5 points off the cusp, if you will, because Sociedad are 8th place. And Sociedad, keep in mind, also like they've lost guys like Alexander Isaac. They're about to lose Zubamendi, and then they had Mikel Moreno leave. So I mean, between those 3 guys, that's a lot of talent there. And I'm still surprised they kept on to Yarzabal, who's a fantastic talent and plays for Spain. So that's a guy I like a lot. And looking at the schedule here, for Sevilla, Vallecano, they're 12th. So they're one spot ahead of Sevilla. So Sevilla wins this game, they're pretty much right back in that conversation of the top 10 of the table. I think they are going to pull this one out. Sevilla have always, the last couple of seasons that they've started off really slow. Keep in mind the year that they lost Diego Carlos and a bunch of other subsequent talents. They struggled. They were down as low as 16th in the table, as well as Valencia and Bilbao at one point. They were all in the bottom half of the table. So Sevilla can just get themselves back into the start here before the winter break, or before the winter time comes around. I shouldn't say winter break. That's Bundesliga. They'll have a shot to at least get to the top half of the table. They're not that far out of reach, though. So I'm going to say, as far as the pick'ems go, I'm going to say they're going to draw with Vallecano. Actually, change my mind on that. I think they're going to draw. Now Leganes and Real Madrid. Now Real Madrid, there's a lot of conversation, and in the future, I plan on bringing my other former co-host from from Reform Hooligans, the Real Madrid fan himself, one of my favorite Madrid fans, is Felipe Palmas. So Felipe is going to be coming on Spin Zone hopefully within the next week or two before the transfer window, and discuss about Alexander-Arnold and Alphonso Davies, and how possibly those two guys are both rumored to Real Madrid. Madrid are also linked to other players. Carlo Ancelotti possibly quitting, but then the Xabi Alonso rumors. So Madrid, they drag a lot of attention. And for a second-place team, you would think that they're 10 points behind, but they're not really that far behind. It's just Barcelona got off to a really hot start, and there were less expectations on a Barcelona team that Madrid, obviously, with everything going on with the Ballon d'Or, with Vini, and then Mbappe coming in on a free, all that circus kind of distracted itself to, hey, Barca's young squad has really developed nicely, and they should get a lot of credit for that. And then never mind, Atletico Madrid went out and got like Julian Alvarez from Manchester City, which is a big blow to City, because I think there were times Alvarez played in there, and Alvarez was able to create results. So I think for City, that was a big loss. Now, in terms of the game against Leganes, I think they'll pull it out. But I think in terms to be said, there are some concerns with Madrid going forward here, as they are going to be competing in Europe. How is Mbappe fit? Because there's still conversations of if Mbappe is actually a 9. Now, can he play the 9? Sure, he can play the 9. But in theory, should he be playing the 9? I think Mbappe is more of a natural wide player. I think if Mbappe best, when he played at Monaco, and they had Fabinho, Bernardo Silva, and João Moutinho, and that was the midfield. And they were able to actually really stretch him out wide and really utilize him. And he was able to create a lot of opportunities for himself. Now, Monaco still had guys like Ben Yedder and I forget that. I think they had Curtis Vollen back then too, I think. So they had a lot of talent on that team, obviously. That team went to a semifinal of a Champions League. It might have won it in the different years, because some of the other years around that time weren't as strong as that year was. But if you look at that Monaco team, I think PSG were able to kind of do some of that when they had Messi, because Messi centrally can make up for a lot of that. But I think where Mbappe is best is if you had a Benzema still, a Benzema type of striker. Someone like a Victor Osimhen, for example, could be someone that complements an Mbappe, because now you play a 2-striker system. You kind of play like a 3-4-1-2, and then the number 10 would be Jude Bellingham. And that might be a good idea in theory, because it allows Tchouaméni and Valverde and of course they'll still have Modric for now. So obviously it allows them to have some rotation there in that midfield and still have their double pivot. So I think for Madrid, there's a lot of schematics that have to go involved. And just like with Barca, once they figure out how to move that roster around, because they're going to owe a lot of money in those interest loans. So there's always a catch. I think for La Liga, going in, when you look at the standings right now, it would be really interesting if Osasuna can stay in that top 5 spot. Bilbao have had a good season so far, 19 and 13, but Osasuna's goal differential is -3, so that's not really encouraging. As I said, it'd be interesting to see if Sevilla can turn it around, or if Getafe can turn it around, because Getafe struggled. But it'd be interesting to see if those teams can turn it around. and that's why the season's as long as it is. So hopefully we'll see some progress this week. So welcome back from the international break. Enjoy the games.